So a few years ago, my wife and I visited my daughter who was in Italy, actually doing a study abroad program. And while we were there, we decided to do the tourist thing and take in all the tourist sites. And we ended up in Pisa seeing, you guessed it, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So we come around this corner and there it is, just like the pictures we see, this big tower that's just leaning. And so it made me think, what do you and I do when our life starts to lean? I'll tell you what the people of Pisa did. They said, hey, we have a tower that's leaning. We're going to make a tourist attraction out of it. And we have things that come in our life and our life begins to lean. Maybe it's a health issue and that kind of takes us off balance. Or maybe it's a relationship issue or a financial issue and we begin to lean. Well, what are we supposed to do when we begin to lean? We're not going to make a tourist attraction out of our leaning, but what is it that we're supposed to do? Well, I'm challenged in Genesis chapter 47. We find Jacob, who's also called Israel, and his health is failing and he's about to die. His life is leaning. And it's very interesting, his response. This is what it says in Genesis 47 and verse 30. But when I rest with my fathers, carry me out of Egypt and bury me where they're buried. I will do as you say, they said. Verse 31, swear to me, he said. Then Joseph swore to him, and Israel, that is Jacob, worshiped as he leaned on top of his staff. So here's a guy who is leaning, who's about ready to cash out. And as he's leaning, he's worshiping. And I'll tell you that when my life starts to lean, my first inclination is usually not to worship. My first inclination is, how can we get this leaning to stop? What do I need to do to solve this problem? If it's a health issue, I go to my doctor to help me not lean. If it's a relationship issue, I want that taken care of so my life doesn't lean. If it's a financial issue, I want something taken care of there so my life doesn't lean. But here's the challenge, that when our life starts to lean, maybe the first thing that we're supposed to do is actually worship. Several years ago, a good friend of mine found that his wife had been diagnosed with cancer. And his life, his entire life, started to lean. And we were praying like crazy that God would do a miraculous thing in her life. And I remember in a very intense prayer time with him, he said this, God, I'm asking that you would heal my wife. And if you choose to heal her, I will worship you. And if you choose not to heal her, I will still worship you. Well, unfortunately, God didn't choose to heal her this side of heaven, and she passed away. But my friend made good on his promise, and he continued to worship. And it was just a great example to me of someone who said, my life may be in chaos right now, it may be leaning, but I'm still going to worship. So whatever it is that you're going through right now, whatever chaos that's going on in your life, the first response that we have to have is to say, whatever's going on, my first response is that I'm going to worship. And when you do that, you join a group of people who would say, I know what it's like to live with little, I know what it's like to live with much, and I can be content in all things. And as my life starts to lean, I'm going to worship. And when you lead worship from a place like that, people are drawn more to the Father. So whatever it is that you're going through, wherever it is that your life is leaning, make worshiping a priority.